Hi, I'm Millie Murillo.
I'm Ashley Torrent.
And I'm Patsy Kenney.
Welcome to the Blue Butterfly Effect podcast, a gathering place for real conversations and quiet revolutions. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. It feels like a lifetime ago, and because the last time we recorded was before the March eclipse season, retrogrades, right, Ash?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think our last episode in January or maybe February.
I don't know. I think we did it with Patsy was late
Oh, that's
March.
right. Late
Yeah.
late February.
Late February. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Either way,
You're fine. It was
feels,
before eclipse season.
yeah, it feels like another lifetime, or so much more time has gone by. And I mean, we're going to talk a little bit today about what we've learned, what we've been through, some of the conversations we've been having. But before we do that, we are so excited to announce and share with you some exciting news about the podcast and the new edition that we have. We are welcoming our dear friend, soul sister, Patsy Kenney, to join us as our co host in this beautiful space. We received lovely feedback from the episode that the three of us recorded, but afterwards, Ash and I talked, and we really felt like this connection, and it was a conversation that happened very naturally of asking Patsy, our dear friend, to join us and to be part of the Blue Butterfly Effect podcast. So welcome, friend.
Yes. Welcome.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you both. I am so honored. It was such a joy to be with you last time. Never saw this one coming. But when you approached me about it, it was an instant yes. It just feels so aligned, and I feel so lucky to be in communion with the three of us, with the two of you, because these soulful conversations that we have separately from recording have been something that's been incredibly nourishing and supportive to my personal growth. And I'm just so freaking grateful to both of you for being part of my world. So thank you for the opportunity. It's a joy to be here.
It's a joy to have you. And I think one of the things I've thought about is to what you mentioned is we do have these lovely conversations that happen very naturally between the three of us. And I thought, oh, of course it would become a podcast. That had not occurred to me, but then it very naturally happened. And I think, at least for me, I think one of the moments that like solidified the connection between the three of us was when we visited Ash last year for her birthday. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, that was an incredibly special time. Like something that I've been aware of and you and I've talked about. I mean, I feel like you and I've talked about in the podcast is our relationship to women. Right. And so for me, being an introvert, inviting two people into my home is a big deal because my energy, I often feel like I have to take care of people. And so often I won't I'm not a big, come to my house and slay and sleep over. But when I felt the natural, invitation arise in my body and to have you, it just felt so natural because I know I don't have to take care of y'all, that y'all are whole within yourselves. And it just felt and then us being together for breakfast and dinner and having those talks, and we would just talk and talk and talk. It just felt so seamless and easy. So just furthering from that birthday to now just feels so natural.
Yeah. I was also in awe of how natural, how comfortable. It's one of those things, those experiences where I'm sure we've all had them. To those of you listening, where you meet somebody maybe you connect online first and then you meet in real life and it's oh, we have walked lifetimes before. This is so familiar. It's bizarre. It's yeah, I mean, to think our friendship truly is only just budding. I mean, in the if we want to talk about time, right? It hasn't been all that long that we've been connected to one another, but the depth and magic of the connection is incredible. It's like hard to put into words.
It's
Right.
just easy. It's just
Mm-hmm.
easy.
Right.
It's effortless. That's what I feel like. It's really
Yeah.
effortless and easeful.
I think the word that comes up for me is safe. Like
Mm-hmm.
the safety of being um, with women who are their own women. And, you know, we're the three of us are very intuitive. And when intuitive women get together, that intuition amplifies, right? So there's more sensitivity and we can feel a lot more. And what I've noticed uh, for me is, oh, I don't feel like I have to be guarded or, you know, watch out for things. And it that those things have been such a part of my life journey and my own healing, and they kind of continue to be, right? Like I don't feel so identified by those things anymore, but I don't know that it's something that will ever leave me. And so to be with creative, intelligent women who are excited about their own life, but also we are excited for each other and we support each other and we hold each other. I mean, we've held each other through some, like, you know, some pretty dark times, like in our own process, which is a really intimate thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing for things to happen in our life, like with our families and even our moves. All three of us moved within a couple of months or weeks from one another, and that wasn't really planned. But what happened inside of us, we were just kind of holding each other through that, and that's really intimate, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And you can't have those types of connections with just anyone. So, um, I just that those are things that don't escape me. I'm like, this was meant to be. This is, you know, source is so generous and kind to have brought us together, I feel.
I
Mhm.
agree. I agree.
I think this is like the perfect segue to talk about the astrology a little bit because I'm really excited to share that.
Please, please.
So the first thing I think is important to remember is both Ash and I are Libra ascendants, right? We're both Libra risings. We've talked about that before. I think that for anyone who is familiar with astrology, even a little bit, I think our demeanors really bring in like that Libra. I think people can really feel our Libra essence, right? Um, but speaking of March, right? Right now we're in April 16th, 2025. Last March, we went through a really significant Venus retrograde. I think it's one of the more significant Venus retrogrades that we've experienced in recent years just because of the context of 2025 and what it means collectively, globally. And so, anytime that Venus retrogrades, anyone who is a Libra rising or even Taurus rising, but right now, you know, we're talking about Libra rising, that is the ruler of your chart, right? So, Venus rules mine and Ashley's chart. And so when that happens, when Venus retrogrades, there is a reconsideration, a recalibration, a reevaluation that happens around partnerships and relationships, right? And it's so interesting. I can know the astrology that's ahead, I can interpret it, but it's always so fascinating to be in that space of, but I wonder how it's actually going to unfold because neither you or I even had the thought that we were going to bring someone in. Like, you know, we had conversations about having guests, and even then we were like, oh, they have to, they really have to feel like, you know, I don't know, like a soul connection. We're very mindful of that. And so, how interesting that just so naturally this transition of the podcast and including one more person, bringing in one more soul sister would happen at a time of this Venus retrograde where we very naturally felt the call like, oh, well, what if we expand connection? What if the collaboration, the partnership looks different? And it wasn't even like a thing. It was just something that I think we both felt and we connected like, hey, did you feel that? Did you? It was very intuitive. And I love that. I love that that happened now. And I'll say one more thing. But so for those that don't know, I have a natal moon in Leo. And currently, both Patsy and Ash, well, Patsy is experiencing a progressed moon in Leo, and Ash is moving into a progressed moon in Leo over the next couple of weeks. So, really, at the beginning of this new chapter and phase of the podcast, we will all have moons in Leo at the same time. And the moon, and just for those that may not be aware, the moon represents a very intuitive expression from us, how we intuitively connect with the world, how we intuitively feel safe in the world. But Leo is the sign of creativity, of expression, of speaking from the heart, of generosity, of joy. It's a fire sign. And again, the three of us have been through such deep internal journeys and transformation, that how interesting that your progressed moons are leaving the sign of Cancer that they were in for 2.5 years and meeting the three of us essentially carrying that moon in Leo energy significantly for quite some time. It's fascinating.
It is. And I can start to feel it. I mean, one of the things that y'all will notice if you look at our podcast logo is it's evolved. And I feel like our podcast logo, initially, the one we've had for the past couple of years, has been very Plutonian, very much about transformation, traveling in the darkness, the shadows, like unearthing the shadows. And you, well, the three of us, they haven't heard so much about Patsy's journey yet, but the three of us is actually have been on significant Pluto journeys. We have spent the past several years like working through deep healing, deep transformation, working through our shadow. And as we naturally move into this moon in Leo, I feel like we wanted to, it was intentional, this evolution, like the butterfly, the transformation. Our logo, I feel like now reflects where we've come after this intense journey. It doesn't mean we've stopped growing, but we actually are more in the light. And I feel it. I feel like ready. I'm good with the darkness. Like I've been in there and I'm like ready, but you know, it's like I know I'm ready. I can feel the more ready for outward expression, the ready to step into creativity, the ready to be seen more, whatever that looks like, and less need to hide. And that's been part of my journey. So that's exciting too, is how the logo and Patsy joining reflects like the journey we've all been on.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see how, because we've talked about this, right? Like on text and in conversations. I'm really curious to see how you feel about it, Pats.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. Fascinating that, as you named, Ash, like we've each been through these own inner kind of darker excavation Plutonian journeys. And it was an instant feeling and shift when my progressed moon moved into Leo. And I'm so grateful to Millie to have that knowledge, because for a really long time I was in the place of like, okay, I'm done already. I am so over this. I'm like, okay, how much more do I need to excavate? Like the machinery is getting tired. And then it was almost like instant as that shift happened astrologically. And so firstly, I just want to say, I'm so excited for you to join the full freedom and feeling of joy. I know you're right there. But this opportunity and invitation to join you both from that space of joy and lightness and expression, it feels, I mean, incredible. What a gift. And I feel the readiness to be in this shared space with you both. And it's like all of that learning gets to now be shared in a way that it feels like the sharing also contributes to the healing, right?
Yes.
So
that's such a good point. Yeah.
I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. You know, I'm realizing right now that I should probably explain just a tiny bit what a progressed moon, what a progressed chart is. So, for those that are not aware, we have a natal chart, right, which is what you pull up on most apps, on any website. That's your natal chart, and really, that is essentially what I've come to realize: the expression, the human egoic expression in this 3D realm. The progress chart is what I like to call the chart behind the chart. And that is the soul's evolution, the soul's expression. So, in the progress chart, the two things that we look at mostly as astrologers is the sun and the moon, but mostly the moon. We look at the luminaries. The sun represents how is this person's ego evolving over time, and the moon represents how is essentially, if we want to put it in very human terms, this person's emotional maturity evolving over time? How is their soul evolving over time? And so, just so everyone knows, the progressed moon is so important because it switches signs every 2.5 years. So, you may have a natal moon in Aquarius, a natal moon in Virgo, a natal moon in Leo, but your progressed moon will always change signs every 2.5 years. And what that does, how that plays out in your natal chart, is fascinating. I think progressions is one of my favorite things in astrology when looking at clients' charts, because it tells me like, oh, this is what they're working at a soul level. And I remember talking to you, Patsy, and when that progressed moon was going to leave Cancer and move into Leo, I kept saying like, just just hold on a little
Hang
bit.
on.
it's almost it's almost done.
Was there.
Yeah.
And I really was gripping with like the very last ounce of
Yes.
energy I had left.
Yeah. And that's what tends to happen when a progressed moon is about to change signs. And when it does, it usually manifests in something physical and tangible for the person. Like
Yeah.
more often than not. Like you moved into your new
And it
place
was immediate.
within days. Right. So, just so everyone knows, and if you want to dive into your own progressed chart, your progressed moons on your own, it's an easy Google search, and I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Learning that through you has been revolutionary. But I'll just add to that little segment of time. I had been searching for an apartment for months, right? And nothing was lining up. And even 6 months prior to that, I had a place and it fell through last minute. And so it was like this continued waiting and knowing and like felt readiness for that next phase. And yet energetically, cosmically, it wasn't there yet. And then as soon as that switch happened, it was like, oh, it's ready. And it's ready within whatever it was, like 15 days. And so it was fascinating to really feel the lived, right? Like how the astrology was playing out in real time. It fascinates me to no end. It's amazing.
It's so palpable.
Palpable,
Like it's you can feel it, and and if you're not feeling it, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just a level of awareness of watching, like feeling the intuitive changes happening within you, the intuitive hits, the intuitive nudges where you feel directed, where you feel called, noticing your energy, noticing. It started with me around the moon, how I felt around the full moon, how I felt around the new moon. That was when I started to attune to it. Then Mercury retrogrades, and but you can feel it. And Pats, I just have to like celebrate your level of trust in that process was incredible. Like I watched you like surrender and trust through the whole thing, just knowing that something was coming towards you. You were doing the practical things like looking for the apartment, but you also had to surrender so much. And I just was like watching you and I was like, oh, she has so much trust and it's so beautiful. And when you landed, I was just like, thank you, for like reinforcing the trust, because this journey, it requires so much trust. Oh my God.
It really, really does. And it continues, and that's the practice. And that's what I love so much about each of your work in the world, is that you are able to support people with those grounding tools to put into practice in these each little micro moments that we're living out, right? Each conversation we have, each circumstances that shifts, like things are going to be constantly changing. That's the nature of being in this human experience. But to be able to trust oneself and this like higher, however you want to name it, like universal divine energy that is, I truly do believe, like supporting us all in the greater, you know what I mean? There's a greater unfolding or meaning behind how things are lining up. If we can remember that and return to that remembrance over and over and over again, like that's the practice. And then it's really interesting to see how these things, play out. And then the practice, even though it's challenging and like, yeah, I mean, like constricting it as it can feel sometimes, that when we are attuned and we are putting these tools to work, it becomes more easeful in our human experience.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's all sunshine and rainbows and beautiful little artwork from your nephew. It is like a little bit more easeful,
Right. Well,
Yeah,
I think.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just to support that. What I've just been thinking a lot about is the contrast, or you could call it pain or suffering, like often that initiates a journey, like the call to healing. And while I don't believe we need suffering for change, I think if we're off our path or out of alignment or not in our authenticity, we feel that suffering more. Like the distance between our authentic self and where we are is the level of suffering we're experiencing. And what I love is I think we've traveled through a lot of contrast. And at this point in our journey, I don't have to experience so much like being shaken up or like, like the universe whispers and then it speaks a little louder. And then, as Lara says, it starts throwing bricks through your windows, like wake up, And I feel like at this point in our journey, we're very attuned to our hearts and to our souls. So the nudges and the contrast it's just gentle, like gentle ripples, gentle waves. And that's what can happen. Like when you start listening and you get in tune with yourself and you start paying attention, is you feel the like gentle ripples and waves rather than like crushing, loud pain. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So well put.
I think it's the difference between like going through something where you can and don't want to get out of bed and having the ability to tap into your heart and being like, I can move through this day and I'm going through all this stuff. Something I think you said, Ash, is that, like the path of healing is non-linear. It feels like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And I think, one of the talks that I'm noticing is really popular on social media right now is the talk of nervous system, right? And so I think that to some extent, the 3 of us have done work around that, whether through facilitating or receiving or both. And we have to remember that when we think about it from that perspective, it's like there is an expansion of the nervous system of our body, of our capacity to hold certain circumstances, right? And we meet that growth edge and then it comes back a little bit, right? But then when we're ready to meet another level of growth edge, it expands a little bit further and then it comes back, right? And then it expands a little further and it comes back. That is, I think, essentially what we have been moving through. And I think our capacity to move through things differently, not because things don't happen or not because we don't feel, it's just different. And I think spirituality is the component, the connection to source, the connection to a different dialogue with life as you're moving through these things. Like, who can you be and who can you walk as when you don't have the answers that you feel you need to feel better? Can you be okay with not being okay?
Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah. And there's so much unknown, right? Just by the nature of being human. And so to expand our capacity for holding that unknown, being okay with the unknown, being okay with not being okay. Yeah, it just is able to support that continued evolution. And we're always growing, we're always evolving.
Yeah.
And I love connecting with folks through my work, as a brand strategist, and in that space of reminding people who are running businesses that, like, just because you established yourself in one way doesn't mean you have to stay that way forevermore. Like,
Mhm.
that evolutionary component, I think, gets lost. And then we find ourselves out of alignment again. And we're like, wait, why? But we haven't maybe taken the time to pause and reevaluate, like, what's changed since I started this business? What's changed in me? What's changed in the marketplace? What's changed within what I'm offering? Is that connecting with people in the same way it was before? But like, this permission to continually stay attuned and kind of move in that evolution as it goes.
Mhm.
And so I feel like I'm really experiencing that. We've started to talk about the eclipse season and what we're learning or learned through that process, but I'm seeing for myself, like I'm ready to be seen now as I am, not as who I was,
Mhm.
and if we can apply that towards not only just self, in internal world and how we're moving through it, but to our businesses as well, it also is permission granting for those who are purchasing our services or our products. And it keeps things fresh. And again, it's like, I don't know, we find ourselves kind of in a cycle, but it's always propelling forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is worth talking about because March of 2025 is such a has been and will be like such a pivotal month in terms of the relationship with ourselves, right? So I talked a little bit earlier about the Venus retrograde and what it represented for Ash and I specifically because we're Libra risings. But in general, that Venus retrograde was really like because Venus retrograded between the last sign of the zodiac Pisces and the first sign of the zodiac Aries. It was how am I, parting ways, saying goodbye, understanding that the relationship with this part of myself is over, right? Pisces, last sign of the zodiac, the dissolving of a certain identity, and that I am emerging into this new one, and that this new one, which is, indicative or representative by the sign of Aries or represented by the sign of Aries is this one requires a little bit more courage. This one requires a little bit more directness and sovereignty. Like, stop waiting for permission. I'm the only one responsible for giving myself permission to show up in my life, to show up in my work, to show up in just with myself in a certain way. And it really is, I think, a more grounded, hopefully, and embodied sense of nobody's going to come and save me, but because I don't need saving in that way. Like, I'm whole. Can I recognize my wholeness? And can that be the source of my courage? Can that be the place from which I take action? Not because I'm trying to control anything, but because the act of creating itself is an act of faith, right? And you were talking about like returning to that faith, returning to that knowing, to that belief, right? And I think this is so much of that. So everyone has moved through this, and I'm really curious to see what has come up for both of you, like what the difference is between you at the beginning of March and now that we're in April.
Do you
You
want
want
to
to
go,
go?
Pads? If you need a minute to think on that, that's okay.
Do you have an answer?
I think so. Yeah, I'm thinking. So, Millie, correct me if I'm wrong, but in October, the eclipse is important in relationship to this March eclipse, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I
That's a good.
feel like in the fall, I started going back to sovereignty. I mean, I started recognizing how little control I had over how other people perceived me, and starting to really change my relationship to others. Like, I think I spent a lot of time trying to energetically be what other people wanted me to be in relationship, you know, like instead of listening to the signs like this probably isn't going to work out, feeling like, well, we need community or we need relationships, so I'm going to unconsciously become this version of myself so that I'll be accepted or we'll be in relationship, and that never went well. So I feel like last fall I really started to claim that I don't have to be anything other than who I am, and trusting that relationships that are for me are for me, community that is for me is for me, and I don't have to do so much work. And in this process, I recognized how codependent I've been with the world, like in a lot of ways, like not in, and I've talked to both of you about this, not necessarily with my family, who I feel like my immediate family, my husband and my kids, I'm very clear with. Like the boundaries are really clear. We communicate really easily, but just this feeling of like strangers, like I need to make you comfortable. I need to damp down my presence so I don't bring up anything in you. And I just realized I was dancing all the time. So I feel like in this process over the past, I guess it's been 6 months, is I've really let go of like, I'm not going to dance for you anymore. I'm not going, if that makes sense, like energetically dancing. I'm not going to I'm not going to not be to diminish myself, or I'm not going to speak my truth, and I'm not going to dim my light because you might have a problem with it, because you're going to think whatever you want to think. And there's so much peace around that, like letting go of it, just letting go of taking care of other people energetically. And the other thing I recognize is relationship to my creativity is how I hold myself. There was always this tension of like, I'm a little bit of a rebel, but a part of me was like, oh, you should be doing it like everyone else. And they were kind of always at war. And I was like, but I'm not going to do it like everybody else. But there was a peace around it in some things, mostly like my creativity. And I've really just taken my creativity back. And I'm like, oh, fuck everything. I don't care. I'm going to do it my way and enjoy the process. And whatever happens at the end of this project, this whatever I'm doing, then so be it, you know. But if my soul wants to create it, that's the most important part. The outcome, I'm just like, I don't care. And that's new.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I think it's worth mentioning, if it's okay, and Brandon can edit this out if it's not, to mention that you have a natal Venus in Aries.
Well, I didn't want to take up too much time, but this Aries energy, she is
Yeah.
up. Like she is
Yeah.
like, I have no fucks to give.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
really big.
Right. And so that goes to just show how important it is to own, you know, these energies in our chart. They're there for a reason. And I think that for you specifically, that Venus retrograde, because when we have Venus retrogrades specifically in our natal Venus signs, it's a returning back to the essence, into the most purest expression of that energy, right? I think the light and the shadow, so that you are okay with it. Yeah.
I mean, that Aries has been in my shadow since I was a little girl, because I've talked about my dynamics with my mother here, but that Aries energy couldn't be in relationship. That wouldn't have flown, you know, it wouldn't have gone. So now to reclaim it, and I could feel in March, I've been feeling kind of angry. And at first I was uncomfortable, and I was like, no, you know what this is? This is your fire. So like, tend to it, be with it. Like, you don't have to like dive into it, but let it like move through you. Like, just let it be, like, let it be a flame. And so I've been noticing, like, yeah, thank you for naming that.
Amazing.
So good. That acceptance piece, like that supports the alchemy, right? It is so refreshing to witness you in your process and to hear you share, you know, that reclamation.
Well, you walked me through a day a couple of weeks ago where I was, because you've been supporting me on my creative journey, and you were like, man, your inner critic is up. And you to mirror that back to me. And I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. But it was like, you held me so beautifully and so compassionately. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. And it was like, bye.
Yeah. And again, like to hold space for that part of you that wasn't able to be fully expressed in your environment growing up. I find it fascinating. Millie and I were talking about this yesterday, but just how, okay, we're wired, right? And we have our charts to kind of help us understand our wiring from the astrological perspective. And then, I mean, depending on where you fall in terms of belief, in terms of spirituality and soul contracts and how we come into this world and we choose our families of origin and you know, there's of course free will while we're here and that kind of thing, but to think about the wiring from an astrological perspective, and then on top of that, the environments that we were in that amplify or repress parts of us that are natural and you know desired to be expressed, like the way that we are meant to be in the world can often be, you know, shut down or dismissed or whatever based on the environment that we're in, or it can be celebrated and encouraged to come out. And so now, like as part of this growth, you know, we get to choose differently. We get to lean into those parts that maybe couldn't be for safety expressed before. So I feel like for me, in terms of the what's been coming up or what when I looked back on the eclipse season and the themes that arose, I mentioned this earlier, but this idea of like ready, and it still feels very tender and vulnerable to be like seen as I am. Like one of my deepest desires is to be fully seen. And that's also one of the things I protect the most. And as a Scorpio sun, that's like a very present theme. And for me in the conditioning piece, it was always like showing up as others, like I needed to show up as others expected me to. And there was like a presentation piece of my journey and a perfectionist kind of polished, like encouragement, if you will, conditioning. And so there were a couple things that happened, like real life examples. I had a friend visit me who I hadn't met yet in real life. And she came into my home and my home was unpolished. There's still boxes from my move back in January over here in the corner. And it like, for me to invite her into this space and it not be polished perfection was a massive moment of like transformation and healing for me.
Wow.
You know, so there's things like that. I was trying to think of like real life examples of how that has played out and being in acceptance with that, like being in acceptance with the process and celebrating that along the way, calming down the critical mind and voice that is ever so present. And in saying yes to this space too, I'm saying yes to like increasing my financial, you know, foundation. So stepping into that, I've bumped up against a lot of like that discomfort as you expand, and the trust thing, turning the dial up again on trust, you know, and really organizing my business and my offerings to actually reflect my energy, how like organizing it in a way that supports my energy and the way I move through the world versus what others expect of me or what is traditionally kind of out there in the space that I occupy. And again, that's all really new. And so it still feels like a little wobbly to be honest.
I think we are collectively, if you're, you know, paying attention to your process, and I think even if you're not, we are in a very raw, tender space, right? We are being asked to somehow, some way embody the essence and the energy of Venus and Aries, whether we have that or not, right? Venus represents all of the things we've been talking about right now: relationships, value, money, relationship to self-perception, like all of these things. And in Aries, collectively, it's gonna be raw. For anyone who knows an Aries, right? They're like to the point. And if we are not comfortable with that, that's going to feel like, like I have to ask for more money. I have to like expand with this. Like I have to own my trust. Like there is such a piece of ownership here that I think is a gift, but because we have been so conditioned to not own most of who we are, and we've spent so much of our life reclaiming and like looking around to seeing if it's okay for us to be who we are, that the level of ownership that we have to take right now feels very raw, very tender. And if this helps anybody, I just want to say, yes, spirit, source, the universe, your soul, like is pleading you to please take ownership of your light, of your rawness, of what you need to do right now for yourself, because whether you realize it or not, that ownership is creating the energetic blueprint of the collective.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's just it's go time.
We
It's
don't
go.
serve anyone when we're doing it the other way.
don't.
We've been trained that, oh, like you're going to make more people comfortable and don't ask for what you want and don't ask you need, but we're just really making each other sick. We're just making each other like we're participating in complacency and diminishing our self-expression and our creativity and all the things. And I remember meeting my husband who's in Aries, and I was like, who talks to people like that? And then, but I was kind of coming from the South. I was kind of like, yeah, who talks to people? He was like, I do. I talk to people like that. But it was so refreshing. And shout out to all those Aries that have been told they're too much. My God, I appreciate that fire because we need it.
Yes.
It's a catalyst for change, that directness. We need honesty. We need to be honest with ourselves and claim those parts of ourselves that we've been, like you said, like turning away from because we've been conditioned or training. It's like the world is not going to change if we are like in codependent relationship with each other and we're all hiding from ourselves and we're lying to ourselves. It's just not.
No, no. And, the expression of your ownership, your reclaiming, and your sovereignty doesn't have to be in such a fiery Aries way.
No,
This is really mostly an internal ownership, an internal, again, giving your like permission giving of self. And that is going to really determine the way that you move through the world and the decisions that you make, right?
Yeah.
um I for those that may not know, I moved into a new space early March. Like that was the eclipse manifestation for me that I was not seeing coming. But as a Libra rising, the cycle of the South Node in Libra between 2023, 2024, like there was that desire to leave a smaller space, a smaller apartment that was very comfortable and very lovely and represented so much for my partner and I. It was our first apartment together. We were so young when we got it in there, and it represented so much possibility and dream, and that space really gave us so much. But for a little over a year, we realized like, okay, there's a change that needs to happen. And because of other components outside of our control, that conversation of we're going to have to leave here soon, was coming up as well. And then truly from about December 2024 through like January, February, we were getting signs like to what you mentioned earlier, Ash, where it's like this, the universe will give you signs and then it's going to throw bricks, right?
Cosmic 2x4 shows up through the
right, exactly. And moving into this space really came from a hawk landing outside of our window one Sunday morning when we were having coffee, right? But before that, we had like, there was like a lot of disturbance with neighbors, which had never happened in the 8 years that we had been living there. Like stuff with our plumbing that we had never experienced in the 8 years of living there. We found mold, like all of these things happened within a matter of like 8 weeks or so, right? And the final sign that really did it for me was when that hawk landed outside of our window And mind you, we live in LA, we live in the city, like a hawk coming right in front of our window.
Something you
And
can't ignore.
right in my body, I was like, we need to get the fuck out of here, because if we don't, something worse is going to happen. So that happened on a Sunday. We started looking, like within an hour of seeing that hawk, we started looking online for apartments again. We had already been searching, but there was something about that lit a light, a fire under us. And we set an appointment to view this apartment the following Monday. We came and saw it. By that Friday, we had signed the lease and given the deposit. And it was like, this has to happen. And it was in my body. And one of the things I told my partner, Carlos, is like, so many of the big decisions that I've made in my life have come from signs, like from signs. Like, yeah, I've thought about things, but none of the decisions have actually been made from like a strategic plan. They've been made from, I saw a hawk outside of our window. That means we got to get out of here. Right. And so the month of March for me has been about like, oh, I am the woman who has stepped into this chapter of her life. Like, I'm no longer becoming her, I am her. Like the connection to this expansion feels different. Like, it's almost like everything that I have been working for internally, I'm now living in it. And like the parting ways with the previous identity, which had so much to do with, again, as Ash mentioned earlier, like walking through the darkness and the transformation and the trauma work and the nervous system healing, like going through the depths of that. The previous apartment was my safe space, my nest for that. And it was perfect. And it was cozy. And it was such, like, that place held me in so many ways. But what happens, and I think this is important for anyone out there doing this kind of work to remember, is that you will grow, you will expand. Your soul will get to a point where it says, I think I've had enough of this. I want to experience expansion. I want to experience joy. I want to experience something else. And I think for different people, it's going to look different ways and it's going to manifest in different ways. And for us, it manifested in a beautiful apartment that is within our budget. It's still twice as much rent, but it's still within our budget, right? Which is an expansion in itself, but crosses off everything on our checklist. And so I'm sharing these things because this is where the practicality of life like really meets the spiritual evolution of our souls. And we have to trust, again, the coming back to that trust and really going back and forth with, okay, this is beautiful. We have central air. Can I allow myself to enjoy it? We have 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. We each get our own room. Right? And really, like, again, the nervous system, the body doing this, expanding and then kind of contracting and being like, this scares me a little bit, and being okay with being scared a little bit, and then breathing and expanding again. And so it has taken weeks for me to be like, oh, this is real. Like, I'm no longer becoming this. I am this. And this isn't a starting all over. This is something really beautiful. And I get to have it and I get to enjoy it. For me to be able to be in that space has taken 10 years of internal work. Yeah. So it's been a month for sure.
I love that you shared that. What'd you say, Pat?
I agreed. We're going to talk the same. I said a joy to witness and so inspiring.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think, again, for anyone listening, like honor what March showed you. Honor it. Again, own it. Allow yourself to have the expansion that life is presenting you with right now, right? Like, grab the thing that you have been afraid to grab because again, it has felt like too much. It has felt too big. It has felt like, oh, that's for them, whoever them is, but not for me. No, you need to, like, spirit wants you to grab this which is presenting you with, and trust that you are not being presented with the opportunity to grow, expand, and liberate yourself if there wasn't divine assistance on the other side.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And just
Amen.
because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean you stop or you don't do it. Like, the discomfort is part of the process.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point too. The discomfort isn't indicating it's a wrong choice.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The discomfort is indicating expansion.
Yes. Yes.
And I imagine it's a relief. Like, if you think about, I don't know why this image just came to my mind, but a little chick hatching out of an egg. It's like the discomfort has become too much to stay in that egg. It can't stay there, you know, without busting through. It's show. And so much growth exists beyond that. And yes, there's learning and discomfort in the new environment that it walks into, but yeah.
I think too often we mistaken the discomfort for, like, oh, I guess the universe is telling me I shouldn't do this. And by the way, the universe isn't, we've said this before, a helicopter parent. It's not like, it's not personal in that like way. Like, it's energy flowing with you. Like, you can feel when something's supporting you and you can feel when something's not. So when we're uncomfortable, we can misinterpret that as discomfort. But remember, growing pains are growing pains. Like, becoming a new version of ourselves means sometimes we have to be more courageous. Sometimes it means we have to move to another country in the middle, you know? Sometimes it means we have to, like, believe in ourselves financially, or like change the way we're working. Whenever the soul wants to evolve, it is like that chick. It wants to outgrow the place that it's in. And that requires us to think a little bit bigger, to trust a lot more, to get creative, to put energy towards that thing. And so that's uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. That discomfort, that doubt, which inevitably comes, doesn't imply regression. It's just doing what it's supposed to do, right? Doubt exists because it's supposed to doubt, but it doesn't identify the essence of who we are, which is source, right? And so much of this human journey is the remembering and the coming back to that. Oh, I am source. I come from source energy and I can trust it, right? Like the coming back. So whenever you are going through a period of expansion and doubt comes, it's not about like, oh, go away, or like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't do it. It's about acknowledging it and saying, but I'm choosing differently. I'm choosing to trust differently. That's a courageous act. That's a courageous choice each and every single time. How can it, like, when I think about that and the human experience and the continuing of coming back to self in every way, like, how do you have time for anything else? Yeah, that's why I believe that, like, time and our attention are so precious. They're so precious.
They really are.
And to protect our energy, to protect what we put our time and attention towards is really important, really precious.
Absolutely.
Going forward, we wanted to just, speak to the audience a bit about, the fact that we have added Patsy on and what our podcast will look like. It's not going to change too much, like the foundation of having the conversations about grounding spirituality and personal transformation. But we like the metaphor of the butterfly, where the podcast really began with Millie sweeping one day in her apartment and having just this intuitive idea of this inspiration of starting a podcast and inviting me to be a part of it. the beautiful thing about that is I believe you had a dream about a blue butterfly. And then you and I had a conversation about how blue butterfly is my spirit sign. And so we started the podcast with that intention and really like walked through a couple of years of our own process in evolving as ourselves as individuals, but also feeling like the podcast was evolving. And so like really honoring the effect, the ripple effect, the butterfly effect had on us as individuals being as a part of the podcast. I know both of us found our voices in different ways and our willingness to be heard and seen in different ways. I mean, you and I've grown a lot in this process. Like it's been such a beautiful catalyst. And thank you to our audience for being on this journey, because I remember that first episode and how scared we both were and just how grateful and we've been at people's insight and feedback and their willingness to listen and participate. So I just want to thank you, because you as the audience have supported our change. And so not only there's this reciprocity there and the energy we put in and then we receive back. So I feel like now going forward, our conversations are just going to be the same. And then we're adding Patsy because we feel like it's a natural time to evolve, similar to how the butterfly evolves. And what we're moving towards is like continuing those conversations, but allowing ourselves to embrace the joy, embrace the light, embrace the willingness to be seen, embrace the creativity, embrace growth. And it feels really nice and natural. It feels really good to bring a new energy into this that feels like a familiar energy, but allowing this podcast to go where it needs to go and to hopefully be in service to more people in different ways, because we now have another soul involved, another voice involved, someone with a different journey. So it just feels really natural. And I think you're just going to hear same kind of conversations, but I think we're in a place where there's going to be a lot more joy, probably a lot more laughter, because we're different. I don't know. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, I'm just so trusting how naturally this has happened and how good it feels to the three of us, and trusting that. And the same way how you and I started this, Ash, and it was just a constant reminder of like, okay, we talk behind the scenes, we plan certain things behind the scenes, and we still let this process be so much about where soul leads us. Right. And this is the same thing. This is in the same way. I trust that we're coming here together. The astrology reflects something so beautiful and so fun. And we will have the conversations that we're meant to have, and I'm just so excited and looking forward to it.
Yeah. Pats, what do you think?
It's going to be so fun to participate and witness it evolve, right? And for me, it's such a delight because I've had the great privilege of working with each of you in terms of your own creative visions and expression and businesses as a soul expression and your voices. Like I came on your path during this time where you were each reclaiming your voice and the boldness behind it and the fire within you and the conviction you have around your points of view. And, that learning and growth again, aligned on the path at a time where then you were already expressing that through the podcast and in other ways, but it's like snowballing and growing. And so then to join you in conversation here just feels so fitting. And I'm really curious to see how it continues to evolve, and delighted to be part of it and to lean into that joy myself. So thank you.
Yeah. Amazing.
So welcome, Pats.
Yay. Yeah. So with that said, it's such a pleasure to be back after the retrogrades. And to feel like we're out of the whirlwind and to bring this newly elevated Blue Butterfly Effect podcast into the world. Are either of you ladies working on anything, offering anything at this moment in time, anything that's coming up for you?
I have a newsletter that I'm really enjoying working on, and it only goes out once a month right now, so it's not so much overload. But if you're interested, please sign up on my website, and I'd love to share it with you.
It's beautiful. It's one of those, Ash, that I like savor. I'm like, I
Yeah.
see it land in the inbox. I'm like, okay, I need to be in the right spot. I need to get in the cozy chair. I need to get my cup of coffee. And it always just, yeah, it's so beautifully written.
Thank you.
I am working on some content for YouTube. So I'll be launching a YouTube channel that starts with a series I'm calling Brand Chats with Pats. And all of that will be live very soon. So you can find out more about it on my website. I'm going to have a little coming soon link. And yeah, it's a little terrifying and exciting.
That's amazing.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah. I am working on something really exciting. I am going to start a group community that is going to involve, I'm calling it the orbit. And so the orbit is going to be this space where people come in. I share daily astrological, spiritual insights or whatever wants to come through. It will involve one call a month with me, one 90-minute call a month with me in group, probably the first Sunday of the month. We're still working things out, and just adding more like behind the scenes content, but it's not just like, it's really soulful content. It's things that I'm creating so that people begin to not just see astrology as something that informs them about them, but really embody their own astrology, their own energetic blueprint. So stay tuned because that's coming.
It's going to be amazing.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, everyone, for listening, for your support. And we are so excited for this next chapter.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you for joining us. If something stirred your soul or made you smile, share it with a friend or leave us a review. Until next time.